An urgent call from work had pulled me back to the office late at night. As I returned home, I moved quietly through the house, careful not to disturb the peace. The moonlight spilled through the windows, guiding my path up the stairs. My family was asleep, or so I believed. Suddenly, I was pulled into the attic by my father-in-law, his grip firm yet trembling. The attic was dim, the air thick with dust and the scent of old memories. I looked at him, confused. His eyes, usually kind and steady, were wide with fear. "Listen carefully," he whispered, nodding towards the floor. "Listen to the sound from downstairs." Bewildered, I strained to hear. There it was, a noise faint but distinct. An unfamiliar sound, a soft rustling followed by a creaking floorboard. It was a sound I'd never heard in our home before. "What on earth is that?" I murmured, a chill running down my spine. My father-in-law motioned for me to peer through a gap in the floorboards. Below, a shadowy figure moved through the hallway, her movements erratic and unsettling. What in the world is going on?" I whispered, my voice trembling with fear. The woman moved with a purpose that made my blood run cold. Her eyes darted around the room, searching, as if hunting for something, or someone. My heart pounded in my chest as my father-in-law leaned closer, his voice barely audible. "Quick, run away. Don't let her find you." Trusting his urgency, I nodded. "My name is Jessica Pfizer, and I am a 38-year-old software engineer." The woman downstairs was my husband's mistress, but at that moment she seemed like something else entirely, a harbinger of chaos. Earlier that day, everything had seemed normal. "Hey, Robert," I had asked my husband that morning, "what time do you think you'll be home?" He smiled at me, that same charming smile that had first drawn me to him. "I should be home on time tonight. Things are calm at work." "That's great," I replied, feeling a warmth in my chest. "We can have dinner together." Robert and I had been married for 2 years, living in his family home with his father. We didn't have children, not by choice but by circumstance. A car accident years ago had left me unable to conceive, a cruel twist of fate that had robbed me of my dreams of motherhood. 10 years ago, I had been on a drive with my parents, our laughter filling the car. The road stretched out before us like a promise. We were carefree, happy. The sky was clear, and the world seemed full of possibilities. My father was humming to a tune on the radio, my mother beside him, her hand resting gently on his arm. They had always been my rock, the people who had supported me through every challenge and celebrated every success. As we drove, I felt a deep sense of gratitude for the life we shared, a life filled with love and laughter. But in an instant, everything changed. A car, running a red light, crashed into us, shattering our world. The sound of screeching tires and the violent impact reverberated through the car, a terrifying cacophony that drowned out my screams. Metal twisted and glass shattered, and then there was silence. I awoke in a hospital bed, the sterile smell of antiseptic in the air. My body ached and my head throbbed with pain. Confusion and fear engulfed me as I tried to piece together what had happened. The doctor's face was grave as he delivered the news that shattered my heart. "I'm sorry, but your parents have passed away. You survived, but what?" I asked, my voice cracking, desperation clawing at my throat. "The accident damaged your uterus," he said gently, his eyes filled with sympathy. "It's not impossible for you to have children, but it will be very difficult." The loss was suffocating. My parents were gone, and with them the dreams I had for my future. I sank into despair, feeling as though I had lost everything. In the days that followed, I felt like a ghost haunting the hallways of my life, disconnected and adrift. Friends and relatives offered their condolences, their words a blur of meaningless sound. I could see their lips moving, but nothing reached me. I was trapped in a world of grief, the weight of it crushing my spirit. But as I sifted through my parents' belongings, their smiling faces and photographs reminded me of their love. I found letters they had written to me over the years, filled with words of encouragement and affection. Each one was a lifeline, pulling me back from the abyss. In those letters, I heard their voices again, urging me to be strong, to find my way back to life. "I can't give up," I told myself. "I still have my work." After the accident, I poured myself into my career as a systems programmer, finding solace in the precision and logic of code. The predictable patterns and solutions provided a refuge from the chaos of emotions I couldn't control. In the world of programming, problems had solutions, and mistakes could be fixed. It was a sanctuary where I felt competent and in control. Relationships seemed impossible, too fraught with potential heartache. I built walls around my heart, believing that love was a luxury I could no longer afford. But then, 3 years ago, Robert entered my life. "I'm Robert Pfizer," he had said, extending a hand in greeting. His eyes were kind, his demeanor earnest. We were colleagues, and over time his sincerity and dedication impressed me. He was unlike anyone I had met before, with a quiet confidence and a gentle humor that slowly began to melt the ice around my heart. One day he surprised me. "Jessica," he said, "would you like to go out for dinner sometime?" His invitation was unexpected, and I hesitated. I felt the familiar tug of fear and doubt. Was I ready to let someone in? "What about your wife?" I asked, recalling rumors of his marriage. I needed to know if he carried the same burdens, if he understood the pain of loss. He looked at me, sadness flickering in his eyes. "I'm divorced. My ex-wife and I parted ways because of infertility issues on my part." His honesty struck a chord in me. Here was someone who understood, who carried similar burdens. There was no pity in his eyes, only understanding and a shared sorrow. "All right," I said, a tentative smile forming on my lips. "Let's go out for dinner." Dinner with Robert was a revelation. We talked and laughed, sharing stories and dreams. He confessed his feelings, and in that moment I realized that I too had feelings for him. Our relationship blossomed, and a year later he proposed. "Jessica, I love you," he said, his voice steady and sincere. "We may not be able to have children, but will you marry me?" I nodded, tears in my eyes. "I became infertile due to an accident. As long as I have you, I'm okay without children." We married, two souls finding solace in each other's imperfections. I thought my life was finally taking a turn for the better, that happiness was within reach. After the wedding, we moved in with Robert's father. It was Robert's wish, and I wanted to support him. "Dad's getting older," he had explained. "I'd like to be there for him." Living with my father-in-law was challenging at first. He was distant, avoiding interaction with me. I couldn't understand why. Did I do something to offend him? I wondered. I would often catch him watching me with an inscrutable expression, as if he were weighing some heavy decision. When I tried to talk to him, he was evasive. "I'm busy right now," he'd say, leaving me feeling like an intruder in my own home. It was as if there was a wall between us, one I couldn't breach no matter how hard I tried. My husband's attitude changed too. The kind man I married became distant, dismissive. "Maybe you did something," he snapped one day when I brought up his father's behavior. His words stung, a sharp reminder of the growing chasm between us. I was bewildered, feeling increasingly isolated in the house. I missed my parents, longed for their comforting presence. Robert, once my anchor, now felt like a stranger. The loving gestures and shared laughter that had once defined our relationship were replaced by silence and cold indifference. It was as if a shadow had fallen over our lives, and I couldn't find a way to dispel it. One night, Robert threw away a stuffed animal that my parents had given me, calling it childish. My heart broke anew. It was as though the man I had married had vanished, replaced by someone cold and unfeeling. I clutched the space where the toy had been, a talisman of my parents' love, and felt a profound sense of loss. But in the midst of my despair, my father-in-law returned the stuffed animal to me. "I saw Robert taking it," he said, his expression softening. "Thank you," I whispered, tears in my eyes. His kindness was a glimmer of hope in a dark time. It was a reminder that beneath his aloof exterior, there was a heart that cared. I resolved to try harder, to reach out to him and find a way to bridge the gap between us. Shortly after, my father-in-law fell ill. He was admitted to the hospital, and I worried for him. When I told Robert, he shrugged it off. "It's not my problem," he said, a dismissive wave of his hand. "Is this the man I married?" I wondered, my heart heavy with disappointment. I felt as though I was losing him, one cruel word at a time. Then one day while out shopping, I saw Robert with another woman. She was older, but their demeanor was intimate, their conversation filled with laughter. My heart sank. Is he having an affair? I wondered, the realization piercing my heart. The sight of them together so at ease was like a knife twisting in my chest. Determined to know the truth, I hired a private investigator. The results were devastating. Not only was Robert cheating, but he was involved with multiple women. The betrayal cut deep, but I couldn't bring myself to leave. Not yet. My father-in-law, facing his own battle with cancer, needed me. I resolved to stay by his side, to offer what comfort I could as he faced the inevitable. Late one night, after returning from the office, I found myself in the attic with my father-in-law. The woman I had seen with Robert, the mistress, was in the house, her presence a threat. "She's dangerous," my father-in-law whispered. "You must leave." His urgency propelled me into action. I escaped the house, a letter from my father-in-law clutched in my hand. It contained his will, naming me his adopted daughter and heir. His son, he wrote, was lost to him. A tragic, haunted soul. 2 years later, my father-in-law passed away, his illness finally claiming him. At the funeral, Robert was a shadow of the man I once knew, his mistress at his side. "She's possessed," my father-in-law had written in his letter. "My late wife's spirit haunts her." The truth was chilling yet explained so much. My ex-husband's descent into madness was complete. He was left with nothing, his wealth squandered, his life in ruins. I, on the other hand, found peace, guided by the love of those who had passed on. 5 years later, as I visited my father-in-law's grave, I reflected on all that had happened, the lessons I had learned, the strength I had found in the darkest of times. My ex-husband and his mistress, now in a mental hospital, were living in their own reality, unaware of the world around them. I hoped they found peace in whatever form it took. For myself, I vowed to live a life that honored the memories of my parents and father-in-law. A life of love, resilience, and hope. The shadows of the past were long, but I had learned to walk in the light, guided by the strength of those I had loved and lost. In the years following the ordeal, I found solace in the simple joys of life. I took up painting, letting the colors and brushstrokes express the emotions I had long kept hidden. Each canvas was a testament to the healing power of creativity, a reflection of the journey I had undertaken. I surrounded myself with friends who supported me, who reminded me of the beauty and goodness still present in the world. Their presence was a balm to my soul, their laughter a music that lifted my spirits. I learned to find joy in solitude, to appreciate the quiet moments of reflection that allowed me to reconnect with my inner self. I spent time in nature, walking through forests and along beaches, feeling the earth beneath my feet and the wind on my face. These moments were sacred, a reminder of the resilience and beauty of life. I also reached out to support groups for those who had experienced loss and betrayal, sharing my story and listening to others. In these circles, I found a community of understanding, a place where we could share our pain and our triumphs. We celebrated each other's successes, offering encouragement and strength as we navigated the challenges of rebuilding our lives. My career flourished as I continued to dedicate myself to my work. I took on new challenges, pushing the boundaries of what I thought possible. With each project, I grew more confident in my abilities, more certain of my path. The work was fulfilling, a source of pride and accomplishment that fueled my spirit. Over time, I even found love again. It came unexpectedly, in the form of a gentle and kind-hearted man named David. He had experienced his own share of heartache and understood the scars I carried. With patience and tenderness, he showed me that love could be healing, that it was possible to trust and open my heart once more. David and I built a life together, a partnership based on mutual respect and understanding. We embraced our imperfections and celebrated our shared journey. With him, I found a sense of peace and belonging that I had thought lost forever. Together, we created a home filled with laughter and love, a sanctuary where we could both grow and thrive. As I stood by my father-in-law's grave, I offered a silent prayer of gratitude for the lessons he had taught me, for the strength and wisdom he had imparted. I knew he was watching over me, guiding me from beyond with a love that transcended the boundaries of life and death. I promised him and myself that I would continue to honor his memory, to live a life filled with purpose and joy. I would carry forward the legacy of love and resilience that he and my parents had instilled in me. In the end, I had learned that life was a journey of both light and shadow, that we must embrace the full spectrum of our experiences to find true fulfillment. With this knowledge, I stepped into the future with hope and courage, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The road was uncertain, but I knew that with the strength of those who had come before me, I could navigate any challenge. And so I moved forward one step at a time, guided by the light of love and the promise of a brighter tomorrow.